President Cyril Ramaphosa has poked holes in former spy boss Arthur Fraser's allegations about the 2020 robbery at his Phala Phala farm in Limpopo. The president says Fraser's input, used by that independent panel into his possible impeachment, is quote-unquote characterised as conjecture and speculation. Ramaphosa is taking the independent panel's review, or rather report on legal review. Our reporter Erin is live to us from the Constitutional Court this morning, Erin, because of course the apex court is where the president wants to be granted direct access.
Michelle, that's right. And in his submissions, which are right before me, along with the report, now required reading not only for the press, but of course many interested and invested members of the public looking into the Phala Phala saga and the independent panel into it, and now the debate in Parliament. It's hard to keep up with every leg of the story. That submission to the Constitutional Court, which was also served on parties yesterday at 4 o'clock, includes the President's arguments as to why he's seeking direct access to the Constitutional Court in this matter. He argues that since some of the rules which Parliament developed around Section 89 were in fact refined and determined after a Constitutional Court ruling back in 2017, the court is well placed. He emphasizes the need for certainty and stability and the sort of uncertainty and instability that comes from having a head of state facing an impeachment process. He talks about the interests of justice, and he talks about the public interest in finalizing whether or not that Section 89 independent panel went wrong, got off course when it looked into the information, the president says, not only evidence, information, including what he claims is hearsay evidence, if you're generous with your adjectives, from Arthur Fraser, as you say, is also called a conjecture and speculation when it looked into the Phala Phala matter and ultimately found that he had a case to answer.
Erin, as has been the case since last week when this report was first released, I think it was on Wednesday last week, there are a number of moving parts to the story. Even as the president now approaches the apex court, there is that appointment we have in Parliament for next Tuesday, where the report will be debated and a decision made around its adoption. But there are also other organizations that we must still hear from: the Public Protector, the Reserve Bank, SARS, the police.
Yes, Michelle, that's right. And also remember the Independent Police Investigative Directorate. And that's because the head of presidential security, Wally Roeder, is another sort of character in the list of players in the Phala Phala story, the Phala Phala drama, if you will. And the president refers to Roeder's own statements, which the panel considered in his 50-odd page submission to the Constitutional Court. He argues that the panel didn't take into due consideration some of what Roeder said in rebuttal to Fraser. I think also interesting to note that the president highlights a question around the origin of all the hearsay information that he says Fraser has used. And then, Michelle, he says that Fraser provides a list of effective sources, you could say. Fraser giving a laundry list, says the president in his legal submissions, of all the documents and material he claims backs up his version of what happened at Phala Phala. But the president in his submissions to the Constitutional Court arguing that there isn't actually a rational link. You can't simply provide a shopping list and say, this shopping list proves that, and then not show the way in which the one does the other. And as much as, we've been discussing this in terms of the Constitutional Court process, you've rightly pointed out there are a number of other operations, or maybe I should say investigations, going on. And these sorts of submissions, these sorts of sources of information, if not evidence, will most likely be considered by them too.
Erin Bates, live to us there from the Constitutional Court with the flame of democracy behind you. Erin, thanks very much indeed.